All right, my brothers and sisters, how are y'all doing? I have to say, I hope that everybody is doing well. A very very short introduction, um, but we are here, ready to go strong this evening, and I tell you, it's a great place to be. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to class, everybody. I've got a camera that is not focused, so y'all hold on for 1 second so I can focus this thing. Uh, I gotta get it focused here, so y'all get to see what I have to do sometimes when it's just me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this hat and put right here and focus on it. How's that? Where's it at? Right here. Focus on the hat. If I can do that, then we'll be good. There it goes. Just that quick, just that simple. That worked. Yes, that worked. Let's see who we have. I called you, couldn't get through. Brother Mario, I think you did call me. Um, Let me see. I'll give you the last four digits. I want to make sure. Um, no, that's not it. I want to get the last four digits. And recent calls. Is it 3028? 3028? If that's it, let me know. Okay, good, good, good. Yeah. Um, I was not able to get to anybody today. Um, at work, at my job, they gave me a new classification, so a lot of stuff has come under me that I was already doing. So it's not nothing new. It's just they decided to do me right, if y'all know what I mean. So when you do that, they have you go to a couple more extra meetings. Let's see who's over here in our chat room, real quick. Well, let's see if we can get this thing to work. Um, I want to get my stream deck working. And I want to say to all of you all, we're going to have a good lesson tonight. A very, very good lesson. So here's the exciting part. Brother Greg was supposed to come on tonight. In fact, he was scheduled. He was ready to come on tonight. But we did some talking, and he's going to come on Friday night. And we decided to do that. Let me just straighten out some stuff here because he's going to basically start that lesson. I don't want to say over, but it went very well where he taught it at this past week. And I want him to just take that to its full level. And he's going to do that Friday night. Um, and as a matter of fact, we may see more of him um, on Friday nights um, because it gives me an opportunity to just take a little break. But he's a very good teacher. He's a very good teacher, and I'm going to be excited about that. Let's see who's in our chat room over here. We got first tonight was Sister Marie in the house. Brother Franklin in the house. Brother Mario Jaffer in the house. Donna Panquin in the house. How you doing, Brother Reginald Israel in the house? Brother Landon Johnson in the house. Latoya Moore in the house. Let's see who had Brother Brian Johnson in the house. Brother Drake Middleton in the house. Brother Brian, thank you for your email that I got from you. And I want to let you know that was the sentiment of several others. And so we made some big modifications in how we're going live on the Sabbath. So thank you for that. Sister Shanika in the house. Tonight, brothers and sisters, this is what we're going to do. Where's my, I got to go back over here and fix this so I can make sure I'm on the right one. Let's see here. Tonight, this is what we're going to do. And I think it's important. Where are we? I want to go and put this in. I want to put my, I've got a scene here. Ah, that's the issue. Okay. Okay, I got this. I want to get this one. This one is not working. So y'all give me a second here so I can fix this up right here. So I want to let y'all know what we're going to do tonight. Here we go, right there. Is that default? Yep, right there. We're going to show a video tonight. And let me tell you why we're going to do this video. I think this video will really let us see from a different perspective. Somebody says, I can't hear you. Okay. That's Sister Brenda Beauclair. Sister Brenda, I think that you might have to turn your volume up. Because usually when you come in, I think we kind of get that where you're not able to hear us. But I'll turn it up some more. Let me see. Let me know how that is, okay? Let me know how that is, Sister Brenda. Glad to have Sister Brenda Beauclair in the room with us. Let's see. I saw somebody else before her. Brother Paul H., thank you for coming in tonight. All right. Volume low. So that's two people told me my volume is low. Can you all hear me now? Testing 1, 2. Can you hear me now? Testing 1, 2. Let me turn this thing up a little bit more. There's something else I can do too. Let me work on that because what happened. Let me hit this and let me go volume. Wow. Okay, I can. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Let me know how this is right now. Okay. Question. Revelations 14:1 says the name of Jesus will be the head of 145,000. Would that be the mark for all saints? Revelations 14:11. The name of Jesus. Let's go look at that real quick. And I want to read that. Now, I don't have the Bible tonight for some reason set up. But I'm going to look for it. I don't know where my Bible app is. There was a big upgrade that we did. So what I did was, opposed to trying to find everything, I'd set something up tonight for this aspect. Oh, I found it. Here we go. Let's see if we could. I had problems with this app. And I don't know what, Brother Mario, I'm going to read it from, there it is. There it is. It came over. Okay, so let me figure out a way to do this where I can bring in the Bible. Let me see if I can do this. There it goes. Okay, so I'll try to bring it in real quick. Let's go to Revelations 14:1. That was a question in the chat room real quick. And I'm going to show you all what we're going to be doing tonight. You're going to enjoy what we're going to be doing tonight. Okay. I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with them 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven as a voice of many waters, and as a voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harps with harping with their harps. And they sung as it were a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whatsoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the firstfruits unto God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne. I'm going to go back and look at my brother's question, and it is Revelations 14:1 says, the name of Jesus will be in the head of the 44,000. Will that be the mark for all saints? Let me say, the mark of all saints, when he says mark them in their foreheads, it is, remember the scripture says the Sabbath is a sign between me and you, okay? And seal them in their foreheads. This is the knowledge. Here is where our understanding is. It's behind here. It's behind your forehead. There's no literal mark where we're going to get a seal that's going to be in our forehead. It says these are they that were marked. So this is those of us that have the understanding that's going to be in that first resurrection. The first resurrection, Brother Reginald, thank you for the question. The first resurrection are those that are worthy and capable of being a part of the spiritual family and being in the kingdom and a part of the government of Christ at the very onset. And that's why it's important that we learn this now. We're being judged now. So let me give you an example. In order to be a teacher, you must be certified. In order to be a nurse, you must become a registered nurse. You must go through a certification. A policeman, a fireman, a doctor, a lawyer. You must pass the law exam before you able or authorized to practice within any state. If you want to be a nurse, you got to pass the credential board. If you want to be a teacher, you got to pass the certification test, so forth and so forth. And I'm bringing out that to say this. In order to be in the kingdom, you have to know this book, because you're going to be ruling over nations and people. That's what Revelations 20th chapter says, that we will be kings and priests, and we're going to be sitting on thrones. So we're not going to get there and we don't know what we're doing. We have to know what we're doing right now. You brought up Revelations, the 4th chapter, saying that the name of Jesus would be in the heads. Would that be the mark for all saints? That is the complete mark for all saints. In order to get inside of that resurrection, you must have the word here. It's got to be here. The understanding has to be here. I hope that I answered that question with that. I really do. But very, very good question, brother. Very good question. So I wanted to just bring that out. Shout out to Coach in the chat room, Sister Tara, Brother James. Thank you, Brother Mario, Sister Delia Paget. Again, thank you, brother, for your question. Now, here's what we're going to do tonight. Tonight is the Christmas truth. The Christmas truth. I could teach the lesson and probably bring you enough information where there won't be any problems. Okay? The problem is that I don't want to call it Stockholm Syndrome, but it's a form of Stockholm Syndrome where there are some people who can read the scriptures and have no problem. No problem. I could read the scriptures and tell you without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt, I can tell you who Israel is. The biblical, historical people. Where are they today? I could read the scriptures and just point them out and tell you. I don't need another book. I don't need DNA. I don't need any other academic scholars to show me. I can read the scriptures and I'm good. I'm completely good. But I respect the fact that there are also people who need a little bit more. They won't accept it unless they get it from what they consider to be a credible source. That's what they say. Sister Delia says, question, weren't those in Revelation 14:1 the children that were killed during Moses and Jesus' time? Well, let me say this, sister. I wasn't going to go there tonight, but yes, that's something that has to be taught. But yes, but his question was not that. His question was that mark that they had, was that the mark of Christ? So that's what his question was. But yes, and I intentionally left that part out because, Sister Delia, you're right on point, sister, right on point. But I'm not prepared to teach that tonight. But you're right on point. I would tell you that right off the bat. It's a good lesson to teach. I don't say I stay away from that lesson, but you have to teach that lesson to people who are prepared because they're adapted to read the word and accept the word. And I'm going to segue that back into what I'm saying now. Some people, you can read the book and you can show them things and they're okay with it. Oh, they can say, oh, I see it. Wow, I get it. There's biblical evidence. And once you get that biblical evidence, you're fine. Some people, you got to come in all different angles. After this Sabbath, I'm going to be teaching a lesson the second and third week titled The Most Authentic Book in the World, the Holy Scriptures. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be a 2-week lesson. When it comes to this Bible, we could read it and we're fine. And when we start to tell people that certain holidays are pagan, when they don't want to do it, it can't come from you. Just hear me out. It cannot come from you. It can come from anybody else, but it cannot come from you. I don't know why. Jesus said that when he went there to his own city, he says, a prophet is just not, don't get the bread. Basically he said, you don't get no respect in your own village. Okay? So you can take this fact that Christmas is pagan. Christmas tree has nothing to do with the birth of Christ. The birth of Christ in the scriptures does not have a date on it, that nobody knows the day of Christ. You could take that information to somebody else, but because you're bringing it, they don't want to hear it. Even if you said, hey, Pastor Johnson did a lesson, I want you to check it out. No. That's the way Hebrews will be with Hebrews. I'm just telling you straight off the bat. Some people, because I don't want to call it Stockholm Syndrome, but they want to hear it from other sources. Well, tonight we're going to deal with that. We're going to deal with that right now, tonight. We're going to do this film on Christmas. And it's a lot of information. To me, it's not long. But I think you're going to be, I showed it before, but I'm going to be right here with you. I set up an overlay that you could see me right here. Here I am. I'm right here. But we're going to watch it over there, right there. We're going to watch it. And I want you to see it, brothers and sisters. I want you to see what's being put on the table. I may move it around a little bit and make it a little bit bigger so we can get as much of it as we want to. There we go. I like just making it that we can get as much out of this screen that we can. Shout out to the Ecamm group. That's the software I'm using they did an upgrade, and you can do all this little new fancy stuff, and shout out to them, but that's another story at a different time. We're going to show this. We're going to show this, and I'm going to be right here with you. And I may pause it. I may not. I don't know. But as we go through, if there's something very important, okay? So let's get started in this right now. And as they say, it's one of the most celebrated holidays worldwide, brothers and sisters. More than 30% of charitable giving takes place during this time of the year. That's when most charities get their money. And as they always say, it's always about the children, but it's one of the most celebrated holidays.
Every time the bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
Oh my gosh! I got a dog!
My favorite part of Christmas was definitely the presents. The presents.
Giving a gift to a child does something inside that child.
That pastor is from Orlando, Florida, Central Florida.
Christmas was really fun growing up.
Yeah.
My dad made a big deal about it. When we were really, really young, he used to do this thing where he would dress up like Santa Claus. And then he would go around the house shouting, ho, 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 Merry Christmas. And it would be like 5 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't wait to have kids of my own and do Christmas with them, like to have like those kind of memories.
And you all know all the movies that are made this time of year. All the Christmas movies. I mean, it's just, shout out to Sister Gwen and Sister Barbara coming in.
Christmas is a fabulous invention. That's why it's the most popular thing in the world. There's nothing like it. There's no stadium rock tour, World Cup gathering, political event, pilgrimage, riot. Nothing is like Christmas. We spend 10% of our life under the spell of Christmas.
I'm Abraham Lockwood. We met in Illinois. I was fresh out of boot camp, and I met her at the mall. Drug her halfway across the United States and funneled her into Ohio.
I'm Michelle.
And I'm Kate.
I'm the older sister.
So obviously makes me the younger one. Yeah, so people can not keep asking us if we're twins.
Twins,
So
I know.
That'd be great.
We get that all the time.
My name is Angie Mosteller. I came from a home where my parents became Christians when I was a little bit older, about 10. So during those younger years of my life, we really didn't have traditions that incorporated or focused on Jesus or our Christian faith. So as a new mom, I was wanting to just think about how can we build traditions that really build up our children in the faith and an understanding of our history. And that's how I got started on the road to researching Christmas and some of the other holidays.
Last year, I went on a Facebook page, and it's called Wiccan Inspirations. It's a witches page, and one of their mottos was "Pagans are the reason for the season," and they were saying that Christians were trying to steal their holiday, the winter solstice. And when I went on the page, I was shocked.
Each kind of pre-Christian society had their own way of celebrating this time of year, but most of them did celebrate some type of aspect of the winter solstice.
Modern day pagans try to claim Christmas. They say, we invented Christmas. This is ours. You nicked it from us.
I didn't really consider the origins of Christmas one way or the other. I just kind of, took everybody else's word for it, that this is what we should be doing. I was reading in Deuteronomy, I think chapter 12, it was, God was telling the Israelites, don't worship your God the way you see the pagans worship their gods. Don't these things I've commanded you to do, don't add to them or take away from them.
Is it a sin for Christians to celebrate Christmas?
It's a sin for them to celebrate Christmas?
How could there be any harms in celebrating his birthday?
Originally, in Christianity for several centuries, there was no such thing as a feast of Christmas. So nobody knew and nobody celebrated the date of the birth of Jesus Christ. And
now notice what we have is different people. You'll find out what their outcome and their views are later. Some of these people are proclaimed tarot card readers. You have a couple there. They came into the knowledge of the truth, and then you have two sisters who came into the knowledge of the truth, but they're sharing their before mindset of Christmas. And now you're going to have some historians who are going to share from an academic standpoint the truth about Christmas and its origin. So as we just heard, at a certain century, there was no Christmas. So let's go back and tune in.
the question why and from where that originated does obviously interest scholars and Christians as well.
Does the Bible actually tell us to observe Christmas? And the answer is, unfortunately, no.
Paul, for example, never mentions this at all. It's not what he's about.
None of the apostles say, remember the birth of Jesus. So there is this tension here within Christianity that we have to be honest with ourselves and say, well, is Christmas as big a deal as we think it is?
I had heard a lot of rumors about the pagan kind of associations with Christmas, and as I was thinking about how I wanted to bring traditions into my home, I had some concern about, do I want to bring pagan traditions into my home? And so I found that a lot of other new parents, as well as teachers and friends, had these same questions. And I'm a little bit of a researcher by nature, and so I thought, I'm going to just look into some of these claims about the history of Christmas.
That's when I started to question, okay, do we see Christmas anywhere in the Bible? No. So maybe we should go back and rethink the way we're looking.
Now, this is important because what's happening is you come into the reality, and what makes it so difficult is Sister Brenda Beauclair says, this is how Satan tricks you by using your kids. Absolutely. Brother Mario says, unfortunately, it looks like you, it's wrong, but still want to do it. Yeah. Looks like you know it's wrong, but you still want to. And absolutely, Brother Mario, this is the point I want to get at. Because if you tried to take this to your family, I'm talking about as Hebrews who don't know that they're Hebrews. If you take this to them right now, what's wrong with you? I mean, something's wrong. You're in a cult. But I wanted to show you where people in what we consider to be mainstream, because let me just define mainstream. Mainstream is the majority Christian thinking, the majority Christian thinking. We as Hebrew Christians, we're not mainstream. What makes us not mainstream? Because there's only a few that will actually read the scripture and take it in its truth value from Genesis to Revelation. Mainstream does not do that. Anybody that's keeping Sunday as a day of worship is classified in my book as mainstream Christianity. Okay? So we're going to now get into some of the history of Christmas, the history. So look at the time frame that it has here when it comes to the Christmas, the history of Christmas.
winter solstice is really key to what Christmas is. It's the birth of the sun. The days start becoming longer. They're getting shorter and shorter and shorter as you go into wintertime. And then at the winter solstice, the days start becoming longer.
I'm Ronald Hutton, Professor of History at the University of Bristol, England. One of my specialities is the history of seasonal festivals. Stonehenge is probably the most famous prehistoric monument in the world. The greatest of those doorway-like three-stone settings was aligned precisely on the setting sun at midwinter. Now, this is a type of monument you find around Western Europe, all the way from Sweden down to Spain and Corsica and Sardinia. The sun's important in places as different as ancient Egypt, ancient Mesoamerica, like the Mayan civilization, the Toltecs, and also at places like Cuzco. Fixating on the sun is kind of something that most ancient peoples do. And the further north you are, the more important this is.
Notice they talked about the fixation of the sun. Now, in the book of Ezekiel, the Lord took Ezekiel and showed him certain things that the children of Israel were doing. And he took him to different parts and sections, and he says, listen, look at this abomination. And then Ezekiel would see it from the perspective of the Lord. Then he showed him another. He said, that's nothing. Let me take you a little bit further. It got to a point where, talking about the worship of the sun, the Lord showed Ezekiel where Israel, the priests, had their backs to the temple and they were worshiping the sun. You see, this goes back a long time ago. Sun worshiping goes all the way back when the Lord grabbed Ezekiel by a lock and started to show, and just took him in his dream just to show him certain things that he needed to see. He said, I want you to see the abominations of Israel. So brothers and sisters, this is not new. This has been going on for a long time. Let's pick this back up.
I think that the celebration of the winter solstice must have begun in connection to the worship of the sun. And we know that people in Scandinavia worship the sun during the Bronze Age. We have found loads and loads of pictures and pictograms and sculptures of the sun. For obvious reasons, we actually almost lose the sun for part of the year.
So Dongzhi is one of the really most important festivals in China. So it's a winter festival. We will have the shortest time of daytime and the longest time of nighttime. So the original holiday traced back all the way like 2,800 years ago, and we say it's almost 3,000 years ago. They will go outside of the palace to worship the heaven.
The practice of Yule goes back pretty far because with Yule, what we're really talking about is the winter solstice.
Yule is quite simply the old Scandinavian, i.e. the Viking name for midwinter. It's the name of their midwinter festival. It's one of the greatest festivals of their year because way up in Scandinavia in the olden times, there wasn't a whole lot you could do around winter. It's exceptionally long and hard up there. And so Yule, getting to its center and knowing that things are going to get better eventually, is the obvious time for a tremendous heathen party.
Wow, did they say a heathen party? So
we have the tradition of the Yule log. That is definitely a symbol, that fire of the rebirth of the sun. So that's another tradition that does represent that aspect of the winter solstice and the sun being reborn.
So we get, this is history. Let me just say this. The Bible only warns us about the worshiping of the sun. In the book of Ezekiel, he warns us. He showed Ezekiel what Israel was doing, the abominations they were doing. And then in Jeremiah, he tells us not to learn the way of the heathen. For they go into a forest, cutting down a tree, decking it with silver and gold. You know all of the Christmas teachings. The warning of this goes back, but as time evolved, brothers and sisters, they took Christmas, which was the worship of the S-U-N, and Constantine, with the play of words, S-U-N with S-O-N, he merged it into Christianity to make the pagans and Christianity. He created a religion. Rome created a religion. And that religion we have today. The fact that there's sun worshiping on Sunday as the day of worship is connected to paganism and Christianity being merged. See, once they get this information from a historical standpoint, because the Bible is not going to give you a history on what paganism is. It just warns you about it. It tells you it's a worship of another God. The Bible don't waste its time on it. It just gives you God's laws, statutes, and judgments, and how you're supposed to live righteous. And it gives you warning. But here, tonight, we're hearing the history of the pagan worship and of the sun and where this mess came from, brothers and sisters. Let's keep going.
It's probably a fertility symbol. In some places, a human figure is chalked on it, called the mock, and some historians say, well, it may be the last remnant of a human sacrifice. But there are some lovely ceremonies attached to it. What you say to the tree when you bring it in. You sprinkle it with grain, which is a sign of fertility, or wine, and say a little prayer over it, and so on.
During Yule celebrations, they would bring in this boar who was called the Sonargalt. It means the boar of atonement. And people would actually swear oaths on the bristles of this boar. And you could also, it's also said that you could make divination by touching the bristles of this big boar. And it was obviously sacrificed and eaten. This boar was dedicated to the god Freyr.
And then it was like, okay, well, where did all the traditions come from? This is before we even saw the Wiccan page. We decided to start looking into it for ourselves, into scripture, and then we were kind of like, well, where did this stuff come from?
That's the question that people need to ask, and they don't ask. Where did this stuff come from? The mistletoe.
The modern Christmas celebrations tie around Saturnalia, the pagan god Saturn, who, among other things, was eating his children until he was overthrown by his own son.
The temple of
Now,
Saturn.
here I must make the absolutely essential point that Christmas is not a day, it's a season. And it's a very long season. Had you shown up in the Middle Ages in early December, you would have been living in the Christmas period.
The date of the Saturnalia is the 17th of December, but it evolves into a festival that lasts several days, actually, and goes right up until, let's say, the 23rd. And a date in that third week of December, I think must be connected to astronomical knowledge about the timing of the winter solstice. We know about the festival of Saturnalia in Roman pagan times from a number of different authors. So we have Seneca and Macrobius chiefly, and poets like Horace and Martial talk a little bit about it. It shares a lot of elements in common with Christmas, we might think. Gift-giving, feasting, a sense of carnival, a sense of celebration, a focus on light in the middle of the darkness of winter. One of the traditions at Saturnalia was present exchange, which of course is very similar to modern Christmas. So people go around exchanging gifts. Little figurines called sigillaria were popular. These could be quite cheap little pottery things, but there were other sorts of gifts as well. Cloaks and a pencil case and wine and a parasol and a parrot.
Saturn being the god of agriculture, he's also associated with the color red. So that's where we get a lot of that red color, along with holly, which is a symbol of Saturn. You have the red berries.
Can you describe what trees and holly and mistletoe have to do with the Christmas story in the Bible?
You got me on that one. I don't know.
Maybe Mary and Joseph like kissed under the mistletoe. I don't know.
I've never heard.
I don't know.
Symbols like holly and mistletoe and greenery in general, they're really just symbolic representations of fertility and vitality at this time of year. So they really just inspire hope that if mistletoe, if holly can grow in the depths of winter, so can I.
Christians fought.
Now I'm going to stop there for a second. We're going to come back to this guy. Here's the issue. When you ask people on the street, they really don't know. And if you was to ask your family, what does the mistletoe have to do with the birth of Christ? Kissing, all of those traditions, what does that have to do? The Yule log, what does that have to do with the birth of Christ? I mean, even if you say, okay, you know what, we're going to celebrate the birth of Christ, but all of those symbols, I mean, we know we can't celebrate a birth that does not, on a date that does not exist, where there's no command to do it. We do have a command that says, for often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you do show the Lord's death till he comes. But that's how Satan works. See, the Lord wants you to recognize his death because he shed his blood, which is life, for the remission of your sins. But Satan, being contradictive to the word of God, an abomination to everything the Lord puts out, he says, no, we're going to recognize the birth, not the death. So you see how this thing works? Let's go back to this, because when you just ask people those little simple questions, why the stocking cap? Why the star on the tree? They don't know. That's the issue. They don't know. But yet they want to do it. And it's the tradition that they want to do. They don't want to give it up. They don't want to walk away from it. I'm telling you, there would be people who would probably come into the knowledge of this truth, but they're not going to come because they don't want to give up this tradition. It's a very satanic tradition that people don't want to give up.
These Saturnalia celebrations, they were originally prohibited in Christian circles for obvious reasons, because again, they understood where they were coming from. Most infamously would be the mistletoe. Now, modern people think it's a quaint custom to hang a mistletoe, and if you see a pretty girl, give her a kiss under the mistletoe.
Check this out.
Well, anyone versed in religious knowledge is going to know that's a fertility ritual, when you're kissing a girl under the mistletoe. Now, the mistletoe not only is beautiful, it's a mysterious thing to traditional peoples. It's actually a parasite. It grows on trees. It doesn't grow in the earth. But to the ancients, that makes it magical. It grows in the sky. That's why the Druids in Celtic tradition, the Druids are a class of priests, would collect the mistletoe.
They had nothing more sacred than the mistletoe. The priest cuts down the mistletoe. Then finally they kill the victim, praying to a god they believe that the mistletoe given in drink will impart fertility to any animal.
But it gets even stranger. If you crush the berries of the mistletoe, it resembles in texture human semen. That's the tie into fertility. That's why, again, in distorted form, people are kissing girls under the mistletoe. In fact, it's kind of an obscene rite saying we want to have sexual intercourse with you.
Mistletoe really is quite rare as a plant. And so it becomes fashionable really in richer, more sophisticated times like the 17th, 18th century. And nobody kisses under it until round about the time of George Washington. It's the late 18th century in London that produces the custom, first for servants in big houses, and then their mistresses and masters, rather sportingly, instead of discouraging the practice, imitate it.
The pagans would practice what's called the world upside down. During this period, teachers would follow orders from students. The students would give them assignments. During this period, masters would serve slaves at the table, and slaves would provide, well, give them orders.
So you have the Feast of Fools. This is often connected to street parades, finding the local village idiot and parading him around as king.
Now's the time we crown the king of fools!
Wild carryings on. But Cowans was really a bigger festival than Saturnalia. It was the New Year festival, with all that may imply, the notion of sort of reconstituting everything, the world being born again.
The Romans would celebrate the Calendae on the 1st of January, which is where we have New Year's Day to this very moment. So that kind of shiver most people get as the clock ticks towards midnight on the 31st of December is really old.
The notion that gifts given on New Year's are Christmas gifts is an idea that exists even today in France, where they're more likely to hand out gifts on New Year's.
Before the 1800s, you do not get presents at Christmas. You get partying and feasting. The presents get given on New Year's Day.
Wow. Awesome information.
When Christians think about the pagan tie-ins, what they're wrestling with is the purity of the faith, right? They're saying, is this really a good thing?
Melissa and I get a lot of letters from people who are newly out of the New Age, which is paganism, and they don't want to be deceived, so they get hyper vigilant about anything that smacks of paganism. So we get a lot of letters from people who are afraid that the Roman Catholic Church appropriated pagan holidays of the winter solstice and put a Christian veneer over it to make it palatable to new Christians, for pagans leaving paganism to come and become Christians.
Right, so the winter solstice is what date?
The 21st.
21st, yeah.
21st, 22nd. So since the solstice is the 20th.
Now, let me let you know what this is about right here. This lady, she wrote a book, and it was titled, There Really Is a Santa Claus. Their talk show that they're doing, this is a clip of it, they're trying to say, well, people are trying to paganize Christmas. They're trying to say that Rome did something bad. So with that understanding, now let's listen to it.
When Christians think about the pagan tie-ins, what they're wrestling with is the purity of the faith, right? They're saying, is this really a good thing?
Melissa and I get a lot of letters from people who are newly out of the New Age, which is paganism, and they don't want to be deceived, so they get hyper vigilant about anything that smacks of paganism. So we get a lot of letters from people who are afraid that the Roman Catholic Church appropriated pagan holidays of the winter solstice and put a Christian veneer over it to make it palatable to new Christians, for pagans leaving paganism to come and become Christians.
Right, so the winter solstice is what date?
The 21st.
21st, yeah.
21st, 22nd. So since the solstice is the 22nd, that's the day where the sun stands still for those 2 days. The 25th is a different date.
Mm-hmm.
Now listen to this guy. He really thinks that he hit a home run on this. This is just amazing. He's got a smile like, hey, well, wait a minute. Christmas can't be tied to the winter solstice. What day is the winter solstice? And they said the 21st. Christmas is on the 25th. That has nothing to do with, Christmas has nothing to do with the winter solstice. Of course it does. This guy act like he hit a home run or something. But that what Rome did, they had nothing to do with Christmas. I'm not going to even put a label on it. I want to go back so you can hear what his analysis is. Listen to this.
To come and become Christians.
Right. So the winter solstice is what date?
The 21st.
21st, yeah.
21st, 22nd. So since the solstice is the 22nd, that's the day where the sun stands still for those 2 days. The 25th is a different date.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So if they were wanting to expropriate the winter solstice, they would have made Jesus born on December 22nd.
True.
That's true.
See, that's true. Yeah, you're right. 45 BC. This is where Caesar declared.
Caesar, Julius Caesar, the famous one, in his calendar reform of 45-44, established the winter solstice as on the 25th of December. Okay?
Okay, so let me let you know what's happening. Okay? So I want to go back to this segment because what he doesn't know is history. So because he doesn't know history, we're going to go back and listen to what he says. And then you're going to go back into scholars who still deal with them. Shout out to Brother Julius and Coach and all of y'all coming inside the chat room. It says V. Israel. Sister Barbara said that was evil smile here. We're going to look at that again. But after he makes his comment that it has nothing to do with Christmas because Christmas is on the 25th and the winter solstice is on the 21st, then the next person is going to show you history as to what happened next. Brother Julius says, read that out of the Bible, book, chapter, and verse. And that's why we're doing this lesson, because let me say this, brothers and sisters, as I was telling you, we're showing this film because the Bible does not give you history on pagan nonsense. It warns you about it. It warns you about it. And in particular, a lot of people forget about Ezekiel. And I'm going to make mention of that again. How he grabbed Ezekiel by the lock and took him through and said, look at all of these abominations. And now I'm going to show you even a greater abomination. And then he says, I'm going to show you a even greater when you got Israel, the priests, with their backs against the temple and they facing the sun, worshiping the sun, weeping for Tammuz. This is, it's crazy. But we got warned about this. But you see, this is why this will give you history of where and how things started. Now we're going to go back and just listen to this so you can hear the historian. Historian is going to correct one Gentile who's just saying anything. Another Gentile who's a historian is going to correct him. Listen to this.
21st, 22nd. So since the solstice is the 22nd, that's the day where the sun stands still for those 2 days. The 25th is a different date.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So if they were wanting to expropriate the winter solstice, they would have made Jesus born on December 22nd.
True.
That's true.
Now watch what Caesar does. He declares winter solstice is now going to be December 25th.
Caesar, Julius Caesar, the famous one, in his calendar reform of 45-44, established the winter solstice as on the 25th of December. Okay? And he said, that's Buma. And Buma means the midwinter.
Everybody knows that the winter solstice is on the 21st of December. But that is actually not the original idea of Julius Caesar, who was the originator, the inventor of our calendar, so to speak. He fixed the date on the 25th of December. So that would be the older Julian date for the solstice. But that calendar is not entirely precise. So basically, roughly speaking, 1 day per century, it shifts. So by the 4th century, when Christmas originated, the date from the 25th had shifted to the 21st. And that's the day that has been later restituted by Pope Gregory XIII in the 16th century to be the standard winter solstice, which is valid until today, and that's what our calendar still says. The winter solstice has nothing whatsoever to do with Christmas, because the Bible simply doesn't speak about any form of solstice, shortest day, the sun or whatever. It just speaks about the birth of a child in a manger. But Christmas preserves the older Julian date for winter solstice, that is the 25th of December.
We don't know when Jesus was born. We don't know when Jesus was born. We don't know when Jesus was born. The gospel stories don't tell us. They give us some clues that we think it was probably generally in the autumn season, but we really don't know.
No one knows when the date was. 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 But almost all the evidence is sometime late September, early October.
And the answer is no one knows.
So why are we celebrating it on the 25th?
Good question. So why are we celebrating on the 25th? Let's get some more history, brothers and sisters.
By about 200, there's a calendar of Antiochus, which says the 25th of December is the birthday of Helios, of the sun. So there is definitely an idea of birthday already by 200 AD.
200 AD.
Probably the first usage of the date 25th December for a big festive occasion is in the early 270s AD or CE, when a Roman emperor called Aurelian dedicates a huge temple at Rome to the unconquered sun, Sol Invictus. Aurelian's a military hard guy who's pulled the empire back together after decades of invasion and civil war. And he's trying to produce a religion around which all the pagans of the empire can unite. And the sun up there in the sky giving warmth and life to the world could be the symbol. And so he dedicates this big temple at Rome to the sun on the 25th of December.
One of the theories now is that Aurelian actually chose December 25th to co-opt a popular Christmas date, that Christmas had already been enough of a whoop for an emperor who wanted to emphasize the sun god and victory to steal it as a date.
There's no regular Christmas observance before Aurelian's temple dedicated to Sol in 274 AD, making this theory improbable.
It is my view, and I think it's the view of the majority of scholars of this period, that Aurelian did dedicate his temple on the 25th of December 274.
Unfortunately, there's no direct evidence for the date of that inauguration. It will have been inaugurated sometime, and it is probably a plausible hypothesis to think that it was the 25th of December. It's a good option, it's a good guess, but there's no hard evidence for that date.
It is still very controversial as to what's going on about the choice of the 25th of December as being an important day for Sol Invictus.
Now, the important thing to bear in mind here is that quite independently of Sol Invictus, December 25th was already widely regarded to be the date of the winter solstice. And this date had already a certain degree of solar symbolism built into it, because obviously this date marks the transition from decreasing daylight length to increasing daylight length. And as a result, it made a lot of sense on a symbolic level to argue that the sun is born on this date, and as the sun grows older, the days grow longer.
We then come to the slightly more controversial problem of, well, then how do you understand that same date being adopted as the birthday of Christ?
354 is the first year in which Christ gets officially given a birthday on the 25th of December.
Check this out. Check this out. This is history.
The Roman Empire has become Christian. Constantine.
I can't think of anything where the word Christmas ever comes up in the reign of Constantine. But because of that December the 25th, and because that was the feast day for the god Sol Invictus, it eventually becomes a convenient day for Christians to celebrate the birth of Christ. The first record we have of this happening is in a surviving calendar from the year 354.
It's called the Philocalian calendar, and it's a bizarre, it's kind of like an almanac. It's got all kinds of pictures and dates and distances of one city to another.
It says this is the day of Sol Invictus, and it's also the day on which Christians celebrate the birth of Christ. It was prepared for a Christian, and yet it had all the pagan holidays in it.
Wow.
And all the things that Christians were supposed to despise.
The need for Christmas was felt in the 4th century and not before that, because the general religious culture changed. And the growing interest in the sun is certainly part of that new religious culture in the 4th century, in late antiquity, and without that growing interest in the sun, probably Christmas would not have originated, or if it originated, it would probably not have fallen on the 25th of December.
Wow.
And this solar symbolism could be in principle also applied to Jesus, because in early Christian sources, Jesus is sometimes being given as solar attributes. He's referred to as the Son of Justice, as Christ the true Sun.
You sometimes get representations of Christ with rays. You sometimes do get a nimbus, meaning a golden zone around the head of Christ and later of other saints as well. You do get, for example, in the apse of Santa Pollinare in Classe in Ravenna, a sun rising above the horizon, which is Christ, recognizable because there's a cross in that sun, and it also says that it is Christ.
If Christ.
Now, you are making some very good points. I think I saw Brother Mario says that ring over the head is the false imagery, sun worship. Absolutely, absolutely. The real trick is that Jesus said to remember his death and not his birth. Absolutely, Brother J-Man. So celebrating his birth is mute. Absolutely. See, this is why we got to do that. Thank you, Brother Julius. He says, Paul only warned the Romans not to boast against the natural trees, true Israel Christians, against the natural branches. Absolutely. That's who we are. So listen, when you look at this, there's no connection. This has nothing to do with the birth of Christ. It was man-made, brothers and sisters. So we're looking at how a pagan worship is now evolving to be connected to something that it just doesn't exist. So let's go back and look at this. Here we go.
Justice as Christ the true Son.
You sometimes get representations of Christ with rays. You sometimes do get a nimbus, meaning a golden zone around the head of Christ and later of other saints as well. You do get, for example, in the apse of Santa Apollinare in Classe in Ravenna, a sun rising above the horizon, which is Christ, recognizable because there's a cross in that sun, and it also says that it is Christ.
If Christ is majesty, and Christ is also justice, there are two reasons for assimilating him to the sun. And if the birthday of the sun is the 25th, it's perfectly possible to make this the date of his birth.
You're unlikely to come on the basis of the information given in the Bible to the 25th of December. But once it was installed, then it was relatively easy to find theories covering that date too. And you could even go further and say, if you take the Gospel Luke 2 seriously, it is unlikely that it happened in winter because the shepherds were out in the fields, and even in Palestine, where it's warmer than in Middle Europe or Northern Europe, even in Palestine, at the end of December, shepherds would not normally be out on the fields with their sheep during night.
See, it's amazing as we look at how things are evolving. So, as they all are saying, it's unlikely, even when you read the book of Luke, that the shepherds would have been out there in the wintertime. But yet, we could share this, and this is academic information, brothers and sisters, because again, the scriptures warns us about paganism, but we're going into other books from academic sources that is telling you it's a faulty system. That's what it is. It's faulty.
The church had a really good marketing strategy. They were great marketers. So any culture they went to, they would incorporate what those people cared about most into Christianity. And that's part of the reason why there are so many variations of Christianity too, in part because each culture around the world is going to care and value different things and have different celebrations, and Christianity took those and incorporated that as a way to help inspire that conversion process.
It took 400 or 500 years to get to all of Europe. The last part of Europe that it went to was Scandinavia. And always when the Christian church went somewhere, they had to negotiate with local political rulers. And so Christmas came to different parts of Europe at different times, but the Catholic Church always found it convenient to fold local custom into their own church.
Håkon did good. He had a plan, and they had this big...
As he said, the Catholic Church always found a way to include local customs into the church. That's just what they did. That is a straight up Rome policy. Historically, that is just what Rome did. Rome realized, and I'm going to tell you something, when we do the lesson, the greatest authentic book in the world being the Bible, you're going to find that history showed that Babylon allowed people to autonomously have their own gods. The Persians did the same thing. You have your own gods. The Greeks did the same thing. You do you as long as you pay. Rome, on the other hand, this fourth and terrible beast, diverse from all of the other beasts before it, they said, you know what? When we come on, now that we're onto the board, now that we're in charge, what we're going to do, we have looked over history. We've looked over time. And every time you let a people do what they want to do, then eventually that kingdom that allows that gets taken down. Because Babylon got taken down. The Medo-Persians got taken down. Greek took down the Medo-Persians, and here comes Rome taking down Greece, and they said, no, what we're going to do is we're going to go, and whatever your practice is, we're going to mix it so that we all can become one. That's exactly what they did. I want to go back to that just so we can pick that up and just move forward. Here we go.
He took those and incorporated that as a way to help inspire that conversion process.
It took 400 or 500 years to get to all of Europe. The last part of Europe that it went to was Scandinavia. And always when the Christian church went somewhere, they had to negotiate with local political rulers. And so Christmas came to different parts of Europe at different times, but the Catholic Church always found it convenient to fold local custom into their own church.
Håkon the Good, he had a plan of converting Norway to Christianity, but in a sort of soft way. So he began with the Christmas celebration. Now, they didn't celebrate Christmas, obviously, because they were pagan, but they did celebrate Yule, and they had this big celebration of Yule around the 12th of January. So Håkon the Good, he changed the date and said he demanded that they start to celebrate on the 25th of December. So instead of celebrating the first sightings of the sun in the north, they were supposed to celebrate the birth of Christ, obviously. And people accepted the change of date. That's okay. So as long as they got a party, they were fine with that.
Rulers made the decision to become Christians. It's kind of funny, a prince or a duke would make a decision for the whole kingdom to say, okay, you'll now all believe this. But you have to do things, even when you're an authoritarian ruler, you have to do things to make the people accept it. So it just was easier to do that, to celebrate these old pagan holidays.
Some people in the church.
You see that? And this is people who are involved with paganism. They're telling you the truth. See, the reason why we're not going to find this type of information in the Bible as to historical, because again, the Bible just warns you to stay away from sun worshiping. Stay away from paganism. Don't eat from the king's table. But here we're hearing it now, what it's really about from the experts, from those that did it, those that participated in it. That's what we're hearing it from. I like the fact that they're not hiding anything. They're not hiding anything. Let's keep going.
And people accepted the change of date. That's okay. So as long as they got a party, they were fine with that.
Rulers made the decision to become Christians. It's kind of funny, a prince or a duke would make a decision for the whole kingdom to say, okay, you'll now all believe this. But you have to do things, even when you're an authoritarian ruler, you have to do things to make the people accept it. So it just was easier to do that, to celebrate these old pagan holidays.
Some people in the church that we were going to started to say things like, okay, well, the roots of Christmas is pagan. We were like, we don't care, okay? We don't care where it came from. The point is that we're celebrating Christ. We're celebrating his birth. I don't care what those people were doing.
I had little sneaking suspicions that it had pagan roots.
Of course.
But it's not until we started really getting into it and doing a little bit of research that I really felt uncomfortable with it. But I didn't say anything because I thought that the rest of the family would not only have a problem with it, but I didn't want to be the black sheep and be like, oh, well.
As a child, not coming from a Christian home, I had a lot of just common questions. I mean, what does St. Nicholas have to do with the birth of Christ?
These are questions we gotta ask. Who is St. Nicholas?
St. Nicholas was, though we've mostly forgotten him, the greatest male saint for 1,000 years. He was almost as powerful and as venerated as the Virgin Mary. Hundreds of churches around the world are St. Nicholas churches. Hundreds of churches around the world are St. Nicholas churches. Hundreds of churches around the world are St. Nicholas churches.
Wow.
The first church in North America is a St. Nicholas church. He is the patron saint of just about everything.
Now, aren't there legends about St. Nicholas?
Yes, this is the one that really makes the headlines. So here's the story. 3 students, so probably they're young men, not kids, but they're always presented as kids. They're going off to study and they stop at this inn where the innkeeper has this nasty habit of killing his guests, chopping them up and pickling them in barrels in the basement and then serving the meat in meat pies. So he kills the kids, chops them up, puts them in the barrel. And St. Nicholas comes visiting a few days later, and spidey senses are tingling. There's something going on here. And he says, "You've got 3 kids in the basement chopped up? Confess." Yes, yes. So he goes down to the basement and resurrects the children. They are reassembled, and so you very often see 3 kids coming out of a tub.
Wow.
He is the patron saint of barrel makers, pickle makers, innkeepers. The innkeeper turned good, by the way, and students and kids.
And there was a custom that this character would come door to door on Christmas time. And he would knock on the door, and he'd be in disguise and say, "Was little Johann a good boy?" And if the mother said yes, he'd give him some candy.
Krampus is an assistant of St. Nicholas. The 2 of them will go door to door, and Nicholas's job is to check in with the children and ask other parents how they've been doing that year. And the Krampus's job is to punish them if they've been bad. This is actually a tradition that's acted out in certain towns in Austria and Bavaria. It's pretty rare now in this form where they go house to house, but where that happens, Nicholas will, as I said, talk to the kids. There's a little traditional rhyme that he says when he enters, and he does give them little small gifts. He's costumed as like a medieval bishop. And this is how the Krampuses were originally. You just take an old coat, turn it inside out so you see the fur, and my Austrian friend said that his grandfather would take a rug off the floor. And so it was just like, how do you disguise yourself and make yourself look like something other?
So it's always a fur-clad, smutty-faced, glowering character. Might carry chains or a whip.
This is where the song comes out. Better watch out, better not pout, better watch out. He's gonna come in town and say who's been naughty or not, or how that goes. Said, tell us smooth things. Don't tell us the truth. Tell us smooth things. And this is where some of our family members are. When you start putting this on the table and you're going to show them this film, and I wish you would show it to them with me narrating like this. Because what they're going to do, this is like pulling out a tooth without Novocaine. This Christmas, they are hooked on it. It's like something has just possessed their minds, and they have just been hypnotized that they just gotta do it. They just gotta do it. You understand what I'm saying? So let's go back and look at this.
Krampus is often shown with the chains, and these chains are held by St. Nicholas, who's the Santa Claus. And they say that this might symbolize how Santa Claus, like as a Christian figure, was able to chain and control these pagan elements.
Let me go back. I wasn't showing it, so let me just take it back just a little bit.
Doing a little bit of research that I really felt uncomfortable with it, but I didn't say anything because I thought that the rest of the family would not only have a problem with it, but I didn't want to be the black sheep and be like, oh, well.
As a child, not coming from a Christian home, I had a lot of just common questions. I mean, what does St. Nicholas have to do with the birth of Christ?
Absolutely. Common questions. So who is St. Nicholas? Here we go. Listen to
St.
this
Nicholas was, though we've mostly forgotten him, the greatest male saint for 1,000 years. He was almost as powerful and as venerated as the Virgin Mary. Hundreds of churches around the world are St. Nicholas churches. Hundreds of churches around the world are St. Nicholas churches.
St. Nicholas.
Hundreds of churches around the world are St. Nicholas churches. The first church in North America is a St. Nicholas church.
Wow.
He is the patron saint of just about everything.
Now, aren't there legends about St. Nicholas?
Yes, this is the one that really makes the headlines. So here's the story. 3 students, so probably they're young men, not kids, but they're always presented as kids. They're going off to study and they stop at this inn where the innkeeper has this nasty habit of killing his guests, chopping them up and pickling them in barrels in the basement and then serving the meat in meat pies. So he kills the kids, chops them up, puts them in the barrel. And St. Nicholas comes visiting a few days later, and spidey senses are tingling. There's something going on here. And he says, "You've got 3 kids in the basement chopped up. Confess." Yes, yes. So he goes down to the basement and resurrects the children. They are reassembled, and so you very often see 3 kids coming out of a tub. He is the patron saint of barrel makers, pickle makers, innkeepers. The innkeeper turned good, by the way, and students and kids.
And there was a custom that this character would come door to door on Christmas time. And he would knock on the door, and he'd be in disguise and say, "Was little Johann a good boy?" And if the mother said yes, he'd give him some candy.
You see?
Krampus is an assistant of St. Nicholas. The 2 of them will go door to door, and Nicholas's job is to check in with the children and ask other parents how they've been doing that year. And the Krampus's job is to punish them if they've been bad. This is actually a tradition that's acted out in certain towns in Austria and Bavaria. It's pretty rare now in this form where they go house to house, but where that happens, Nicholas will, as I said, talk to the kids. There's a little traditional rhyme that he says when he enters, and he does give them little small gifts. He's costumed as like a medieval bishop. And this is how the Krampuses were originally. You just take an old coat, turn it inside out so you see the fur. And my Austrian friend said that his grandfather would take a rug off the floor. And so it was just like, how do you disguise yourself and make yourself look like something other?
So it's always a fur-clad, smutty-faced, glowering character. Might carry chains or a whip.
This Krampus is often shown with the chains, and these chains are held by St. Nicholas, who's the Santa Claus. And they say that this might symbolize how Santa Claus, like as a Christian figure, was able to chain and control these pagan elements.
At the time, as opposed to modern day Santa, who is in charge of both giving gifts and keeping track of who's naughty, those responsibilities were split between the 2. So St. Nicholas would give out treats, small toys, things like that, and Krampus would be the one who would be used by parents to threaten their kids. If you're bad, Krampus is going to come and take you away.
You know, these masking traditions can go back to the 1100s or so, or even older, to the Roman Empire.
You see?
When we first heard about the pagan roots, is they were saying like the Christmas tree was pagan, and that is something that we shouldn't be doing. But we were like, well, we're celebrating the birth of Christ.
Maybe they're worshiping the tree, but we're not.
We're not worshiping the tree. We're not carving it into an idol. We're just cutting down a tree and bringing it into our house. And so we're like, okay, well, where did this Christmas tree thing come from?
Now, I like the honesty of those ladies, because I'm going to go back just to what they had stated, because this is the thing that we hear from family members. Well, I'm not celebrating pagan. I'm not doing anything pagan. I'm not worshiping the tree. I'm not worshiping all of that stuff. You know, that doesn't. I don't worship Santa Claus. It's for the kids. Brothers and sisters, we got to go all in this year. We really have to go all in on this year. We really do. In loving kindness. But this is what you hear is what people are saying. The moment you tell your family, and you got to really start now, because I took a walk around my neighborhood tonight, and Halloween came down and Christmas stuff came up. I kid you not. I went walking around the block and I saw a family out there. They were taking down their Halloween blow-ups and putting up their Christmas blow-ups. See, this is why we're going to have to hit this now. We're going to have to hit this now and just deal with this, because we have to show people, listen, this sounds like you. Oh, I'm not celebrating that. I'm not celebrating. That don't mean that to me. Let's listen to this.
They were saying like the Christmas tree was pagan and that is something that we shouldn't be doing. But we were like, well, we're celebrating the birth of Christ.
Maybe they're worshiping the tree, but we're not.
We're not worshiping the tree. We're not carving it into an idol. We're just cutting down a tree and bringing it into our house. And so we're like, okay, well, where did this Christmas tree thing come from?
Those are the questions people need to ask. Where did it come from? So here's some information on the Christmas tree.
The earliest evidence we have of evergreens being brought into the houses is early folklore. It's from the Middle Ages. We just know that people have been taking evergreen branches, for example, of evergreens, mistletoe, juniper, holly, or other pine tree branches into the houses it has been important to put it into the houses as a way of protection, warding off evil, and as a symbol of life, basically, during this time of death and darkness.
But the first notion of an evergreen tree-like object comes from the late 1400s. It's a pole stuck up outside, decorated with evergreen branches. And we know of at least one in London, and two in the Baltic area, Estonia and Latvia, where German merchants had set up trading posts. Now, as to who is the first, it's a heated topic in Estonia and Latvia.
Now I'm going to hold that there. This is the same tree that Jeremiah, the prophet, warns us in the 10th chapter. Learn not the way of the heathen. For one goeth into the tree, or one goeth into the forest with an axe. They cut down a tree, they fasten it with nails, that it stands upright, it don't move, and they deck it with silver and gold. That's why I'm going into so when you see the history of the Christmas tree, a lot of different people claim it. Well, it came from us. No, it came from us. No, this thing goes way back, brothers and sisters. It goes back. Brother Cornelius says, where can I find this documentary and what is the name of it? This documentary came from about 4 different films, and I took clips from them all and put this one together. So this is a culmination of different segments and of historians, and some of them were spliced, cut in, taken the good parts, taken from this, put it into that one. I do play it without me interrupting it like this, but I wanted to do it this way tonight so we can kind of get some understanding of where it's going at. So let's go back over here and check this out, because here's what everybody's talking about this Christmas tree.
The story of the Christmas tree is documented in the Brotherhood of Blackheads Chronicles from the year 1509, 1510, written in the Old German language. According to the chronicles, logs were burned during the winter solstice in pagan traditions, and it's likely that the first Christmas tree was originally meant to be set on fire at Town Hall Square in Riga.
Riga claims to have put up the first ever Christmas tree in this very town square right here in the year 1510, it says on the ground. This is obviously a big tourist attraction because, Christmas trees are European-wide tradition, everyone knows about them. Lots of tourists have come along and taken their photo with this. The only issue is that Estonia, where I've just come from, also claims to have put up the first Christmas tree in 1441 in Tallinn Town Square by the Brotherhood of Blackheads Merchant Association.
In the 1500s, say, half a century or so later, people are moving the trees inside. This happens in Germany. They will go out into the forest and lop the top off an evergreen tree. They'll bring it inside and they'll hang it upside down from the ceiling. By the late 1500s, people start cutting down the whole tree and bringing it inside and setting it, we would say, right side up.
It becomes a great fashion across Germany in the 17th, 18th centuries, and German refugees fleeing from Napoleon bring it to England the 1790s, 1800s. And it becomes an English fashion, largely because of one very influential German. He's Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's husband, who introduces it to the royal family in the 1840s. And that's when it becomes a pretty well universal tradition.
But what I think is interesting is that when this Yule tree tradition came or returned from the south, then lots of Christians were upset about it because they thought it was a pagan tradition.
Trees, especially evergreen trees, are very important in ancient symbolism. A lot of northern pagan peoples have the idea of one enormous tree that connects all the levels of the world, from the top of the sky through to the underworld.
In scientific thought, we always ignore the irregular, the exception to the rule. In magical thought, it's the reverse. The ordinary doesn't attract attention, the unusual does. So because the tree remains green when all other trees are dead, this gives special significance to the evergreen tree. What's ever unusual is magical and powerful. Presbyterians don't realize today that the Reformed churches in the Reformation suppressed Christmas celebrations as well because they understood it was pagan.
If we're saying...
See, this is important because this is history. So this is people in general. Whatever is unusual and different, the world just made a god out of it. That's just what they did. So you got this evergreen tree that because it stays green during the winter, oh, that's unusual. Let's bow down to that. See, this is why the Lord told Israel to stay away from these other nations. You be the light to the nations. Don't follow these nations. But Israel decided to do the opposite. This is why the Lord said, what nation is there that would have such a powerful God? What nation is there that have such wonderful laws and statutes that would leave their God and go to another? Israel did that. Israel did that. This is why we've been scattered. This is why he says, I'm going to put you on ships. I'm going to scatter you among the four corners of the earth because you are a hard-hearted, stiff-necked people. And that's why he had to show it to Ezekiel. Look at these abominations. Israel got their back to the temple worshiping the sun. And the Lord warned us, Jeremiah warned us, stay away from these pagan rituals. And brothers and sisters, people are getting ready for it right now. Right now. Let's pick this up here and go back and check it out. So let's listen to this. Pick it up, back up.
Suppressed Christmas celebrations as well because they understood it was pagan.
If we're saying that we're celebrating his birth, then why is everything that we're doing all about us and our family and
What we want to do.
what we want to do?
That's a good question, isn't it? That's a very good question.
A perfect theological solution. God brings us everything good, so why not say to the children, the baby Jesus, the Christ child, das Christkindl, le petit Jésus, has brought you this.
So having Santa bring gifts and having the Christ child bring gifts is like, that's a big issue. And people will have stickers, in really traditional areas, they'll have stickers in their windows with a slash through Santa Claus or the Christmas man saying, no Weihnachtsmann here.
And the ironic thing is, you know, I think it was in Germany they came up with the Kris Kringle term, which means Christ child, because they were trying to kind of turn the focus back to Jesus to say, he's the real giver of gifts, and our greatest gift was his own life, giving himself. But it's ironic because I always thought that term meant, I thought it was synonymous with St. Nicholas, but it actually means Christ child.
Christmas goes into a decline in England and the English-speaking world after King Charles II comes back to power in 1660 and the Puritans are booted out. People have lost the taste for Christmas in that period, or at least to say the upper class seems to have lost its taste for Christmas. Christmas becomes associated with peasants, the lower classes, the countryside. Over the next 150 years, by 1800, both in England and in American colonies, particularly in northeastern America, Christmas has turned into an outdoor New Year's Eve bash. It's associated with adults, alcohol, making a nuisance of yourself, jostling prosperous citizens off the sidewalk, burning down churches belonging to African Americans, beating up immigrants, all the kind of stuff you like to do if you're a thug on New Year's Eve. So that's what Christmas is associated with.
Now see, if the Hebrew pastors who don't know they're Hebrews, if they knew this, I don't even know, I really don't even know if it would even make a difference. You see, because this is history. You see, this is history being brought to you by the Gentiles who even put this thing on the table through Rome. And they're letting you know what was associated with Christmas back in those periods of time. We're going to go back and listen to it. But I want you to hear this, because if you was to show this to somebody, they would have a fit. But yet, who's the number one observers of this? Not only the whole world, but it's right in the churches, right in the black neighborhoods, the people that's going to spend the most money for Christmas. Listen to this.
England and in American colonies, particularly in northeastern America, Christmas has turned into an outdoor New Year's Eve bash. It's associated with adults, alcohol, making a nuisance of yourself, jostling prosperous citizens off the sidewalk, burning down churches belonging to African Americans, beating up immigrants, all the kind of stuff you like to do if you're a thug on New Year's Eve. So that's what Christmas is associated with. You look at some of the illustrations in England at that time period, and it does not seem to be a time of religion or generosity.
Why was Christmas once illegal in America?
Dang.
You could even be fined for celebrating it.
Oh, wow. Whoa. I have no idea. Would it have been So I don't know what Christmas was like before like the 1900s. So I'm not really like, would that have been just,
I don't know.
Would that have to do with the paganism, or would that have to do with maybe the something? I don't know. Well, could you tell me?
So Christmas was banned in America at one time, brothers and sisters.
In northeastern United States, it was outlawed. The states settled by the Puritans, like Connecticut, Massachusetts, didn't like Christmas, didn't want to have anything to do with it. And apparently, it was right until the 1870s that Christmas Day was a school day, a work day.
Yeah, well, the Puritans were real killjoys.
Yeah, they were much fun.
If you go to the American Antiquarian Society, there'll be sermons against the evils of Christmas. The colony records of Massachusetts and the colony records of Connecticut, you can find the laws right there. They thought Christmas was an immoral holiday.
If you were in America, in Boston in 1810, Christmas was ignored. Boston was overwhelmingly Protestant, and it was just a normal day.
From the mid-1640s, actually outlawed. And it's...
I'm going to read this so you can see that Christmas not only banned in America, but listen to this here.
Christmas was an immoral holiday.
If you were in America, in Boston in 1810, Christmas was ignored.
1810.
Boston was overwhelmingly Protestant, and it was just a normal day.
Be it ordained that the nativity of Christ be no longer observed within this kingdom of England.
From the mid-1640s to 1660, Christmas is officially outlawed. Businesses had to be open on Christmas. If you shut down on Christmas, you were in trouble. The Sheriff of London would go around and pull down greenery that he saw on the streets. Christmas services were broken up by the police, people thrown in jail. So Christmas carols were silent, Christmas services silent, Christmas festivities were silent.
And the reason is because they knew that it had nothing to do with Christ. So this is why today England is not Catholic, they're Protestant. So they knew where it came in. Although today they celebrate it, but they knew then this is pagan to the second power. This is pagan practices and rituals to the second power brought in by Rome, Catholicism, and Rome. England wasn't having it. So they outlawed it. That's just basically what happened. Let's keep going.
Those periods. And it becomes a social problem in both England and northeastern United States.
I think the first time it crossed my mind that there was something wrong was maybe when I was about 5. If we're celebrating Christ's birth, if it's his birthday party, why is Santa in the foreground?
Everybody should ask that question. Everybody.
Santa Claus, who the heck is Santa Claus? Santa Claus is a bastardization of the Dutch Sinterklaas, Saint Nicholas. So we can tell that folk memory has preserved it because there is it's only oral. So we have Sandy Claw, Sandy Claus, Sinterklaas, Santa Claus, all one word.
This will sound rather unusual, but in fact, Santa Claus is really just a grossly distorted version of the pagan god Odin. He is the only Norse god routinely depicted as old.
There was still that connection where people were making between paganism, Yule and Christmas, so that might be part of it, is making Saint Nick kind of look like Odin a little bit. But do keep in mind that's just a theory, so.
Saint Nicholas walks or rides a white horse in most parts of Europe.
And the 8 flying reindeer? Those probably had their roots in Odin's flying 8-legged horse.
Now this is pagan, where they would celebrate Odin coming down on his horse, and they would put little shoes out with food in it for the horse, and Odin as a thanks would put, candy or some kind of treats in that shoe and replace the hay or whatever they had put there for the horse.
Sometime around 1200, some Catholic nuns in an orphanage put a little gift in the shoes of their children that they're caring for on the eve of St. Nicholas Day. So the evening of December 5th. And kids wake up and there's something lovely and they say, St. Nicholas brought that. Well, it just seems like such a great idea. It spreads all across Europe. The real magic happens in a poem that appears in 1821 called A Children's Friend. This is a poem about the arrival on Christmas Eve of a figure called Santa Claus. And he's not wearing a bishop's outfit, he's wearing a long robe trimmed in fur. Nobody knows who wrote this, but this is a guy who started a revolution. The next year, one of these New York aristocrats that wants to domesticate Christmas tells to his family the poem that we know is The Night Before Christmas. And he's obviously read A Children's Friend because he comes down the chimney, clothed all in fur, except this time he's not a full-sized adult, he is some dwarfish figure, small enough to fit down a chimney.
Wow.
Now Santa Claus enters the house through the chimney and leaves that way, and people miss the significance. In traditional lore, the sorcerer, the witch, the demon does not enter by the door. Your friend, an ordinary safe person, comes by the door. The thief enters by the window. Witches, sorcerers, demons enter through the chimney.
See this?
And this old Santa Claus version, again, is a demonized version of Odin. He climbs down the chimney.
In this poem, there's no long black birchen rod. There's no horse manure in the stocking. There's no switches. This is a guy of whom you don't have to be afraid. So this notion of a grandfatherly, magical gift bringer who comes on December 24th in a reindeer-powered sleigh goes viral.
Coca-Cola took it to a little different level.
The crowd yelled, "There's the Elmos," and they rushed us.
I think there comes a point where the roots are so far gone that the present meaning doesn't carry the pagan connotation anymore.
This is New York. You see other things in that. Now this lady's practicing witchcraft.
I tend to follow more of a Wiccan-based paganism, but there are many different forms and types of paganism.
I personally celebrate Yule on the 23rd of December usually, just to kind of carry it on a little bit to join in with my family's festivities.
So we'll start with the gold candle and we'll turn towards the east.
Wow.
Grandmother,
So it's connected to...
I find it amusing when people say, put Christ back in Christmas, because if you are Christian and you really do want to follow, the teachings of Jesus, then yeah, it probably doesn't make much sense to have all of these kind of, pagan things that represent fertility, because that's not really about the birth of Jesus.
Some people say it's not likely
that the Christians would have wanted to take a pagan festival and make it Christian. On the other hand, they do appear to have done so. So I think one needs to find some other way of explaining what's going on.
So if you go to the Vatican today, you'll be surprised to find full mosaics from pagan temples just in the church.
In the middle of the square is this giant obelisk there. That's not even a Roman thing, that's an Egyptian solar deity monument. It's created by the Egyptians to honor their sun god Ra.
There was a temple to Minerva. That later got converted into a church. And its modern name, the name of the church is Santa Maria Sopra Minerva, which means on top of Minerva.
Wow. All of these churches, pagan temples, pagan temples. Look at them, pagan temples. All of these places, brothers and sisters, pagan.
The early Christians took on from paganism the shape of their churches, decorations like statues and hangings and altars and cloths, and a great many festivals, especially to those connected to obvious turning points of the year like midwinter and midsummer.
I tend to celebrate the 8 holidays most commonly associated with Wicca, and those are all based around the movement of the sun and the seasons. So the winter solstice Yule, or the summer solstice Litha, and then the 2 equinoxes where day and night are equal. And in the fall, the autumnal equinox would be Mabon, the vernal equinox would be Ostara. And then you have 4 points in between. So that's how you make the 8 holidays, which are all about recognizing those changes in the seasons.
Outside Christmas, there are plenty of synchronizations of pagan with later Christian festivals. May Day becomes the feast of the apostles, Philip and James. Midsummer becomes the feast of John the Baptist. What we now call Halloween, the great pagan festival that opened winter, becomes the feast of All Saints and All Souls, and so you go on round the year.
When comparing the Christmas calendar with the pagan one, it is impossible not to be struck by the great concordance between the two. It's impossible not to, brothers and sisters. There's a connection. There's a connection. A connection. Look at this. See, they don't hide it. But you show this to somebody, they're not going to believe it. Look at that. Wow.
Is it a sin to celebrate Christmas?
I don't think so, no. It's a joyous celebration. I mean, you're celebrating the birth of Jesus.
No, but I don't know why. I mean, I don't know.
Is it a sin to celebrate Christmas?
Good question.
So what Christianity has done over the centuries is to take stuff from the surroundings and tame it, Christianize it. So we don't have human sacrifices anymore. We consider that bad manners, but we have the Yule log. You know, we don't do druidic stuff, but we have the mistletoe. You know, we're not dancing naked in the streets, but we are giving little presents, like at Callan's, to kids.
For people that want to just, say that it doesn't come from pagan origins, my opinion on that is, well, you're just turning a blind eye to what history has told us. I mean, these trends, these stories, this is scholars, the scholarly work that has been done. I like to look at Robert Weber, whose Institute of Christian Worship series is pretty much my go-to source. I mean, he documents these origins. Yeah. It's there. Secular historians document these things. When we deny that these origins exist, we actually do disservice to Christianity's, and what I would actually say or argue, we do disservice to Christian intellect. And then we end up just coming across as these sort of dumb fundamentalists, and that's not helpful.
This is important.
Dumb fundamentalists. It's worse than that. Listen, it's so bad, brothers and sisters, See, you can show people this in the apologetic community, and they still gonna hold on to the Christmas tree. They still gonna hold on to this pagan worship, because they're gonna say, well, it's not pagan to me. I'm not worshiping the tree. It's not pagan to me because that's not what the mistletoe means to me. That is bad analyzation. That is bad comparison. It's horrific. It's turning the blind eye. You're fooling yourself. So if you're showing this to one of your family members, I just want to say, when you ignore this history, if somebody's trying to show this to you to wake you up and you just ignore it and you just want to do it anyway, this is where, after a while, the Lord just says, turn that person over to a reprobated mind. Because you're showing them what the origin is. Again, you're not going to get the origin of this pagan stuff out of the Bible. You got to go get it from the people who created it. And how they told you, we're celebrating a God. You take anything that's unusual and we're going to worship it. That's what pagans did. So no matter how you show this to people, they're just going to fight against it. And how can you when you got all of this evidence? Let's just keep going. Keep going.
19th century scholars discovered that rich.
I want to play this part back again. Listen to this.
Historians document these things. When we deny that these origins exist, we actually do disservice to Christianity's, and what I would actually say or argue, we do disservice to Christian intellect. And then we end up just coming across as these sort of dumb fundamentalists, and that's not helpful.
This is an important point. 19th century scholars discovered that rituals outlive beliefs. So what happens is the ritual continues, but we forget why we're doing it. And then we invent an explanation. And the 19th century scholars called this myth, to explain why we're doing something. You could also call it a rationalization.
What we've both come to realize is that Christmas is something where you're literally saying that this is for me and I'm worshiping you, I'm celebrating you in this way. I'm not celebrating him by saying today's Friday. You know what I mean? Right? So it's like, I think it makes a big difference when you're actually doing something for him.
Exactly.
God is spirit, they that worship him must worship him in spirit and truth.
What really is the bottom line for me is Deuteronomy chapter 12, not worshiping God the way we see other people worship their gods.
The way the pagans do.
That in itself is enough to not celebrate Christmas, knowing that Christmas is not in the Bible and taking that scripture.
I would ask, where in scripture do we find that, the Father redeemed anything from a pagan god's worship and redeemed it for himself? I don't see that anywhere in scripture.
I would say it's really worth the risk if the date itself, December 25, was chosen because of some proximity to some kind of pagan festival. Let's just take it and sanctify it and make the most of it, because Christ is worthy to be celebrated in his birth.
Did he just say what I thought he said? Let's just do it anyway because let's just sanctify it anyway. Did he just say that? Let's go back. Let's just do it. Let's just do it anyway. It doesn't matter. Let's just sanctify it. And that's why I put up that scripture in Isaiah, because people do things sanctifying themselves behind the tree, eating the swine's flesh. Let's go back and listen to this guy, because he said it. He said it. So let's go back and look at what he said.
See that anywhere in Scripture.
I would say it's really worth the risk if the date itself, December 25, was chosen because of some proximity to some kind of pagan festival. Let's just take it and sanctify it and make the most of it because Christ is worthy to be celebrated in his birth.
So each time that you are presented with an image, imagine that the logo and branding are being proposed for use on your church. So if you're ready, let's begin. So this one is the triple goddess. The moon is the symbol of the goddess and its three phases, waxing, full, and waning.
This leaves me waning. If you're being redeemed from something, you don't bring it with you. Okay, I can change, but
this is a good exercise. I want to go back. So what they did in this exercise, the reason I brought this clip, portion of the clip into this, is because they are shown various symbols and how they have pagan origins. So this group of people are brought in and they're showing them what symbols and things that churches create to be their symbol. And when they show them what they really mean, they want to get their response as to what these things mean. And so the question is, well, can you sanctify it? So let's go over there and check this out. Let's go over there and check this back out. So when asked if these pagan things could be redeemed, let's go back and look at it. But this is what, let me go back here a little bit. This is some of their reaction when they saw some of this stuff. All right, here we go.
Is the triple goddess. The moon is the symbol of the goddess and its three phases, waxing, full, and waning.
this leaves me waning.
Is their reaction?
If you're being redeemed from something, you don't bring it with you. Okay, I can change, but I shouldn't be still drinking, carousing, and doing all that stuff. Bringing the symbol of what it was with you, and then having to say, oh, but it's been redefined, I think misses the point.
But the scriptures are very clear that we're not supposed to be mixing the holy with the unholy, right? And so just because something is tradition does not mean that it's right. There's a lot of things that are tradition.
What the different prophets were told to do with the symbols of Baal or Dagon or any of the other gods they ran into, they were to burn them, destroy them, not incorporate them. And that, I think, would be the foundation I would use. Even though that's an Old Testament example, I still believe that it's more true.
If we're going to take that legalistic approach to Christmas, then we're going to have to rethink a whole lot of things. And my personal opinion is I reject that interpretation that says because Deuteronomy said this, we shouldn't do that. Deuteronomy says a lot of things. So am I moderate? Am I, bordering on the edge of heresy? You be the judge.
So what this guy does, this is what you call, he acknowledges that Christmas has a bad origin. He acknowledges that it's pagan to its fullest. He acknowledges throughout the film, and the reason why I kind of split him up along the way, when somebody says, where is this film? That's why I split it up. So you can see that this is an individual who at the beginning acknowledged the fact that Christmas does not exist. There's no birthday for Christ in the Bible. He acknowledges all of that. He acknowledges that the Christmas tree has a bad origin. And then he comes to this conclusion. Let's listen to it.
I still believe that it's more true.
If we're going to take that legalistic approach to Christmas, then we're going to have to rethink a whole lot of things. And my personal opinion is I reject that interpretation that says because Deuteronomy said this, we shouldn't do that. Deuteronomy says a lot of things. So am I moderate? Am I, bordering on the edge of heresy? You be the judge.
I think everything should be tested, and every person needs to test everything that they see. And the Word of God is the best way to test everything that you see. Instead of observing Christmas, we've switched to observing the feast days. Sukkot, Passover.
When I started to study more about the biblical feasts, I started to wonder why Christians are not observing them, and when these are things that actually point back to him being, the Passover lamb.
Exactly. That points to him being the ultimate sacrificial lamb. What does Christmas tree and carolyn have anything to do with him?
It's hard to be gentle and telling your kids the way you think that you should be doing things without saying and not having an explanation as to why your friends and family don't do the same thing. We don't want them to make them look bad at all. So, I think usually the only explanation is, well, we don't believe all the same things they do, and it just kind of, leave it at that, I guess.
It's a pagan ceremony through and through. There's absolutely nothing to do with the birth of Christ regarding Christmas. I know it sounds alarming.
You can have it both ways in deciding how pagan Christmas actually should be or can be viewed as being. On the one hand, it definitely was a time of year sacred to pagans all over Europe. On the other hand, the symbolism of the return of the Son and the birth of the Son of God is fairly self-evident too. And so you can, if you like, have a Christian concept of Christmas.
Well, as a historian, you must say, if you want to get rid of all Christian traditions that are not strictly speaking attested in the Bible, then you have to get rid of many, many things. Christianity has grown over centuries, and the whole package, what it means to be a Christian today, is shaped certainly by biblical traditions, but also by many other elements. So you would really, in terms of Christian feasts, you would have to get rid of many, many things, not just Christmas and liturgy and so on. That is one thing. The other thing is that
listen, this guy could not have said it better. If you want to get rid of all of the paganism stuff and practices that are brought in to Christianity, it's not only Christmas that you have to get over with. You got to get rid of the bunny rabbits laying eggs, because that's another big ritual brought in. Paganism to the third power brought in. I just want to listen to those comments again. Here we go.
And the birth of the Son of God is fairly self-evident too. And so you can, if you like, have a Christian concept of Christmas.
Well, as a historian, you must say, if you want to get rid of all Christian traditions that are not strictly speaking attested in the Bible, then you have to get rid of many, many things. Christianity has grown over centuries, and the whole package, what it means to be a Christian today, is shaped certainly by biblical traditions, but also by many other elements. So you would really, in terms of Christian feasts, you would have to get rid of many, many things, not just Christmas and liturgy and so on. That is one thing. The other thing is that I think it is important to bear in mind that Christmas is not attested in the Bible.
Well, sin is transgression against the law. And in his law, the Father does tell us do not worship me the way.
Now, I love the conclusion. These are two sisters. I love the conclusion that they derive to. I'm going to go to it so we can hear it from the beginning. But I just want to make mention that I love the conclusion that they came to. And I
In the
thought it was
Bible?
a great conclusion. Just from, they talked about the fact when they were children, they enjoyed Christmas and how their father did certain things, and they were looking forward that when they grew up, they would be able to carry on the tradition. And this is the biggest problem with a lot of people. It's a tradition that Mama and them, y'all know who Mama and them are. It's something that Mama and them did, and you feel like if you don't do it, then you are breaking the tradition of Mama and them, who's in heaven looking down. You see? So, but you got to realize the scripture says that when you come into the knowledge, maybe Mama and them didn't have the knowledge. Maybe Grandmama and them didn't have the knowledge. But today, we have the knowledge. So it's time to turn it around so you can take what little Christian foundation that you were given and build on it and break the curse, break the Santa Claus curse, the mistletoe curse, the Christmas tree curse, break the satanic curse, brothers and sisters. Listen to this. I loved the conclusion that these sisters came to. Listen to this.
Well, sin is transgression against the law. And in his law, the Father does tell us do not worship me the way the pagans worship their God. Where we worship him as the way pagans worship their God when we were involved in the Christmas traditions.
We were doing all the same traditions.
The same traditions at the same time, too.
At the same time.
Yeah.
And we were saying that we were doing it for him.
Yeah, like we saw it as our part of our Christian religion in a sense. So we were worshiping him.
We were thinking in order to be a Christian that how could we not celebrate his birth?
Yeah.
So it was a form of worship.
It was a form of worship. So
based on that criteria, then
I think we were sinning. I think we were in sin, obviously unknowingly, clearly.
So yeah, I would say that celebrating Christmas could definitely be
a sin.
Does it
matter?
I think it does. You know why? Because you see, the reason why I think that even if someone could say, okay, prove to me that celebrating Christmas is not a sin, I think it still matters, because that is almost like me saying to my husband that as long as I don't commit adultery against you, that there's no reason for you to divorce me. What kind of a marriage would that be? Don't I want to make him happy? Do I want to do what pleases him?
It's way bigger than whether it's a sin. It's a sad place that's where the discussion goes.
Yeah.
Oh well, it's not a sin, so I can do it. Oh well, it's not going to cause my salvation, so therefore I can do it. It's like, where have we come? How did we get to this point that we just want to do the bare minimum? We say that it's all about him. We sing the songs that, I give myself away, but then we'll give ourselves until a certain limit. Oh, I'm not giving away my Christmas. I'm not giving away those traditions because it's not a sin. And I'm not going to lose my salvation. So, no, I'm not letting go of that. Then are you giving yourself away?
Of course he still loves you. What about loving him? You know what I mean? And honestly, thinking about it just breaks my heart. What about loving him?
Brothers and sisters, I can only just say that I just hope that people wake up. I hope you enjoyed this lesson tonight. You need to share it. You need to like this video. You need to put a thumbs up to build up the algorithm so that other people can get it. And you need to share it with your family members. And to those family members that receive this, that is going to start going out Christmas shopping after getting this information, and you're going to go celebrate a day in the name of Jesus that has nothing to do with the birth of Christ, that has nothing to do with the Word of God, has nothing to do. You've gotten the history, you've gotten the roots of it, you got the origin of it, you got the information. And some people might say, well, that's not in the Bible, because the Lord ain't going to put in where pagan practices and the root of it come from. He just warned you about it. So we had to go get the scholars who instituted the days, the scholars who know the origin of this, to put it out on the plate with hopes that you would wake up, that this is satanic as it can ever be. Wake up. Wake up. Stop. Make 2021 the year that you stop and say, you know what? I'm not doing it. I may not understand anything else, but I understand this is pagan worship to the second power. You're giving homage and recognition to Satan. This is a trick of Satan to throw you so far off track. And that's why it's hard for you to stop it, because it's rooted in you. It's a part of your fleshful DNA, and you want to just do it. You don't want to let go. You think you're going to hurt the feelings of the kids and mama and them, and what about the ham, and what about the family getting together? And this is the time of the year that we do it. Stop it. Stop it. You don't love the Lord when you do this. When you create a way how you want to love him, when he says, if you love me, keep my commandments. And this is not a command of the Lord. This is a practice of Satan, the root of all of this, right before your eyes. So I can say, let it go before it is. And let me tell you this, we as the historical Israel who have the oracles, we have to put this out to you. We have to. Whether it's hurts your feelings, we have to. This year, let this go. Let that go. Let that go. It's the Lord's not pleased. Let it go. Don't go shopping. You're going to go into the shopping malls, and they're going to start putting up. You're going to go inside of your drugstores, your local drugstores, at Walmarts and Walgreens and CVS's, and I think they still have Kmart's around, and your Best Buys, and they're going to start hanging up Christmas celebrations. They're going to start hanging them up. They used to do it when Christmas or turkey was over. They don't do that. They do it right when Halloween is over. They start putting it out. They're not even going to put out the turkey and all like that. No. They're not even doing it. It's all about Christmas right now. They're going to get you into it. They're going to hypnotize you starting now, starting right now. It's already started. You're going to start walking in the stores hearing the Christmas music. This is what you're going to hear when you go inside. You're going to hear this Christmas music. That's what you're going to hear. Chorals and all of this. You're going to see all of these signs and people wanting to give. And you're going to see it all over. All this is going to just, brothers and sisters, don't fall for the trap. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't let the lights hypnotize you, all the people walking around, the malls are decorated, the ice skating rinks and the balls and the lights. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. You've heard the origin of this stuff. Do not, I repeat, do not fall for it. Thank all of you all for tuning in tonight. Tomorrow night, we got another video. Tune in tomorrow night, 8:30. We got another video we're going to show you that is even more informative that you're going to enjoy. It's a little bit shorter than this, but tune in tomorrow night. We're going to deal with this, brothers and sisters. We're going to get this stuff out there so we can wake folk up. I want to say to all of you all, thank you for tuning in tonight. Thank you for what you do and sharing and liking and becoming a subscriber. Hit that notification bell so you can get notified when the next lesson is coming up. God bless you in the name of Jesus.